KTAR News. Newsmaker.
Earlier this week, U.S. Representative Yassamin Ansari sent a letter, along with other members of Congress from Arizona, asking the head of the Department of Homeland Security to stop allowing ICE to arrest undocumented migrants when they show up for their immigration hearings.
And we thought that would be the focus of our interview with Ansari, who joins us on the Newsmaker line now. But Congresswoman, you visited an ICE detention center in Eloy yesterday, and you came out very unhappy with what you heard from the migrants being held there. Tell us, what did you see?
Hi, first of all, thank you so much for having me on. Yes, yesterday I went to the Eloy Detention Center for a surprise visit, and was definitely a smooth process, and I was grateful to be able to see the facility. But I had the opportunity to speak with many women as they were eating in the eating area during lunchtime, and with my district director, who is fluent in Spanish. We ultimately spoke with more than a dozen women, and they were so eager to speak with us and share sickening stories about things like lack of access to basics like food and water or essential medical care when they are in crisis. The most horrific, though, was accounts of really dehumanizing and degrading behavior from some of the staff members. They described a story to me that took place a month ago where a person who monitors lunch forced them outside in the heat and essentially forced them to march outside in the heat for 2 hours without water, being yelled at, the guards saying things like, quote, "This is the price of the American dream," all until somebody fainted. And this wasn't just one person telling me this story. More than a dozen people were eager to share that it is horrific and that they face racism and dehumanizing behavior every single day.
You also said yesterday that they told you about overcrowding and that there was mold in some of the cells. And not to question their veracity, but did you see any of the conditions that they told you about firsthand?
I mean, I got a full tour of the facility, and look, I mean, it's a prison. It's not. This is not a nice facility. I appreciate that I was able to see it, but it's very much prison-like. Did I see mold firsthand? No, but I saw, cells that would be heartbreaking for anyone to live in, especially if with any additional issues like mold or lack of AC. One of the constant themes that came up was the AC issue, and allegedly for quite some time there was no AC on for them, and then after complaints, AC would be turned on so high that in those cells, women would be freezing at night, and they literally pointed to one woman who was sitting right there silently, and they're like, she has been so sick and lacking care because of this, and this woman looked deathly ill to me. So overall, just a very heartbreaking experience. There were people in there with DACA status. There was a woman in there whose husband was a U.S. citizen. She lives in Chandler. She was actually going to what she thought was a green card appointment when she was detained and brought here by ICE. And it's just there were a variety of stories in terms of people's backstories and how they got there.
As a member of Congress, what can you do to address your concerns? Is there anything you can do other than sending letters and holding press conferences?
That's a great question. It's very tough with this administration. I think the pressure has to come from me, but also from the public. I'm somebody who does vehemently disagree with the Trump administration's extreme mass deportation policy. But what I was saying yesterday and what I stand by is, look, if you're going to have such an extreme policy, the least that the administration should be doing is ensuring that those people who are then put into these detention facilities are treated with basic dignity and respect. There needs to be much better training of staff. We need to enhance the level and quality of services provided and the attention. The access to counsel is a huge issue. We met later with the Florence Immigration Project, and they talked through some of the programs that the administration cut immediately, which included, before January, each one of these individuals in the detention centers would have access to legal counsel through nonprofit organizations, and nonprofits received much greater access to the client list and circumstances and when court dates would be. And now that is not really the case. The nonprofit can get in, but instead of being able to work with dozens of people, they maybe can work with a handful with the amount of access that they're given. And that's a huge issue. That's inefficient in the system. Everyone should have access to legal representation to be able to, get through these processes faster, and just the conditions. These are private companies. Core Civic running this detention center, they are making billions of dollars. So the least that they can do is make sure that their staff and the U.S. government with ICE treats people there with respect.
All right. Thanks so much for your time this morning. Really appreciate it. That is U.S. Representative Yassamin Ansari of Arizona, who visited an ICE detention center, or an ICE-led, because it's not actually run by ICE, it's run by this private company that she mentioned, visiting that center, and she says she was told by people there that there's overcrowding, there's moldy cells, the folks have been forced to march out in the heat, and they are lacking some basic necessities like food and water and medical care in some cases.
Thanks for watching Arizona's Morning News. Click to watch more from KTAR News and hit the button in the middle to subscribe.